Periscope, Twitch, Jib Jab, I don't know, whatever. I'm not even sure where I'm streaming this right now. But if you are watching live right now, happy Friday, May 22nd, 2020. And if you're watching live and not after the fact, then you know right now, obviously, we are going through and experiencing the coronavirus pandemic, the quarantine, the shelter in place, all the other stressors and things like that that come along with this whole pandemic. It's unprecedented. We've never experienced in our lives before. And we are all going through what I think can best be described as emotionally charged times. And that leads us to experience emotionally charged periods, emotionally charged moments where we're more prone to experiencing extreme emotions more easily. Might be a little bit more on edge. And for some people, those are brief moments. For other people, those might stretch out to longer periods. For some people, again, they might be really frequent. And for other people, it's more infrequent. But because we are living in such emotionally charged times right now, I think it's the perfect time to really touch on the power of language, the power of the words that we use in communicating on a daily basis, not just in communicating with each other in conversation and email and chat and texts, comments and social media and things like that. But probably more importantly, and really where I want to focus most of my attention is on the language and the words that we use in our inner dialogue and the words we use to communicate with ourselves and how those impact our emotions. So anybody who gets to know me usually notices at least two particular things about my personality. And the first one is that I'm absolutely fascinated by words, by language. And I kind of trace this back to when I first really got exposed to George Carlin's work. And unfortunately, I was familiar with him, but I didn't really get into his stuff until after he passed away in 2008. And then I was just like all in on listening to his comedy albums and his, live specials and everything like that. And I was, first of all, completely captivated by how hilarious this guy was, but also fascinated by his fascination with language and then just his talent for using words to just articulate things in such a unique and hilarious and thought-provoking way even. And so that kind of jump-started my obsession with the power of the words that we use. And the other thing people typically notice about me is not my COVID hairstyle, but I'm pretty obsessed with personal development. And, even to talk about language in that sense, I don't even really go for the title of self-improvement, because even though you're doing a lot of the work yourself, you're usually, using external resources, and it just doesn't ring true to me the way that personal development does. Maybe that's because, former software developer. And personal development sounds like you are creating something and replacing something else, and you're really building on yourself. So anyway, I digress. But personal development and language are two really big passions of mine. And recently, I've been sort of retaking a personal development course or training program that I got through Tony Robbins' organization. And the program is called Creating Lasting Change. And the purpose of the program is to be able to help other people transform and make transformational changes in their lives. And it's a kind of a condensed version of intensive training and immersive training that I've done with their organization called Leadership Academy, which is like a 4-day training. It's amazing. And this is sort of an audio version of that. It's an amazing product. I would highly recommend going and checking it out. But I originally started using this program again because I was about to do a live training, and I was kind of going back to the program to use it sort of as a model and as a guide for how I wanted to get my message across in this live training. And what ended up happening was I'm going through these steps and refamiliarizing myself with some of these steps and really picking up some new things that maybe I hadn't paid attention to before, and really taking this transformational content and applying it to myself, and changes that I also wanted to make in my life. And in particular, one of the later lessons that I was listening to early this morning talked about the patterns in our language. And essentially, creating any sort of change, creating any sort of transformation is replacing a pattern that doesn't serve you with a new, better pattern that is more empowering, more fulfilling, that actually serves you a little bit more. And so this particular session that I was listening to talked about the patterns in our language that we use and the words that we use, and specifically around the emotions that we feel. And basically it said that in the English language, we have thousands of words to describe different emotions. And that means that there are potentially thousands of different variations of what we might consider simple emotions. But almost everybody walks around and uses just about a dozen words for the emotions that they feel on a regular basis. So while you could have, just 10 different words off the top of my head to talk about what being mad is like, you could have mad, pissed, angry, furious, peeved, ticked off, right? Like all of these things, we typically will just have a handful of words that we use to describe those feelings and those emotions, which can get us into trouble because we might feel, a little irked, but because we don't use irked as a word commonly, we just go with angry or mad. That can actually cause us to feel a stronger emotion than we're actually feeling, or that we would have normally been feeling in that moment. And it's just a really interesting concept to me to have thousands of words, but to only really resort to these handful of words that we actually use on a regular basis. And we're doing that, again, not just when we're talking to other people. You don't just tell other people that you're furious. You're telling yourself that you're furious. And then that makes you feel furious. And that fascinates me to no end. And the exercise at the end of this session is what I want to talk with you about when I mention a one-word transformation challenge. And I want to challenge you, if you're up for it, if you're up to create a lasting change and create a transformation in your life, and to see how simple it can be. I'm going to do this over the next probably week or two, and I'm going to tell you about the challenge, and I want you to, tell me in a comment or reach out and connect and let me know if you're up for this as well. So the exercise that they have you do in this particular session is to start writing down the words that you use for some of the negative emotions that you feel on a regular basis. And I think they ask you to write down like 3, and I wrote down like 8. Some of the words that I wrote down were like fed up, frustrated, mad, overwhelmed, stressed. And then the words that I wrote down that I'm going to commit to finding replacements for, and this is the challenge, is to take these words that make you feel these strong negative emotions and to come up with alternatives, and come up with an alternative that is more appropriate, that you could use to prevent yourself from feeling these strong negative emotions in the cases where it doesn't really serve you. And so the words that I'm going to replace in my own vocabulary, I have a tendency, people view me as pretty intense and that I set really high standards for myself. I'm sure I'm the only one, right? But because I tend to set really high standards for myself, oftentimes I even unwittingly hold other people to extremely high, sometimes unreasonable expectations. And again, sometimes I don't even realize that I'm doing that. But because of that, if people, quote unquote, if people don't meet those expectations, then I feel disappointed or I feel let down. And a lot of times people don't even know that I have these expectations of them. But the point here is that I am feeling those emotions. I'm feeling disappointed and let down. And I definitely need to work on not setting such crazy expectations of people and then not even communicating those things. But as I'm doing that, in the moments whenever I start to feel disappointed and let down, I'm going to come up with replacements for those words. I'm still searching for the right replacements for my internal dialogue. So if somebody doesn't meet a expectation that I unwittingly set for them, instead of saying, they really let me down, could I instead internally be saying, I'm not, instead of saying I'm let down or I'm disappointed, say I'm adjusting my expectations, or I'm a little bummed, and so that's the challenge. And that's the challenge I'm going to pose to you, is to, for say the next week, write down some of the negative emotions that you feel on a regular basis. Do you feel sad, depressed, bummed out, angry, pissed? What are your words? What are some of those negative emotions that don't serve you, particularly when you allow those words to make you feel that emotion more strongly than you normally would feel? And so write down a handful of those words, pick one of those words, and come up with a different word that you could use and try to pattern in over the next week, and see how you feel if, instead of being furious, if that's a word that you use internally a lot, and you're just like, I'm just furious at that, and furious at this person, and furious at the news broadcast, and instead you say, I am irked. It's going to feel a little weird at first, but if you could say you're watching Fox News or MSNBC and, oh man, that really irked me today, or they made me really peeved, instead of saying, I'm just so furious at them, say, I'm so peeved. Like, you start to actually notice that your emotional state may change a little bit. So let me know in a comment, or send me a DM, or whatever it is you want to do, and let me know if you're up for this challenge and if you want to join me on this, because I think it's going to be really, really amazing, and you're going to really surprise yourself. And join me as I take disappointed and let down and turn it into something else, and something that serves me better and actually helps me lead a more peaceful and more fulfilling life. And with that, I will leave you to your day, and just want to say, as always, thanks for watching.